If you're born in the United States, you're an American citizen. Simple, right? Except it's not that simple. Not everywhere, not even always here. Because while that idea, born here, belong here, feels baked into American life, it's actually rare in the world. And it's becoming even rarer. What we call birthright citizenship has become one of the most quietly controversial topics in immigration and identity, one that sits right at the intersection of borders, laws, and culture. So today, we're unpacking the story behind it, how it works, who gets it, and why so many countries are turning away from it, just as others defend it like a sacred right. Let's start with what it really means. Birthright citizenship is the idea that if you're born in a country, you automatically become a citizen, no matter who your parents are. In Latin, it's called jus soli, or right of the soil. There's also jus sanguinis, right of blood, which means citizenship is passed down from parents, not place of birth. The United States follows jus soli, thanks to the 14th Amendment, passed in 1868. It states all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. So if you're born in Texas, whether your parents are citizens, tourists, undocumented, or anything in between, you're legally American. But here's where things get interesting. Very few countries do this anymore. Out of nearly 200 countries, only around 30 offer full birthright citizenship. That list includes Canada, Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil, but not most of Europe, Asia, or Africa. So how does America compare globally? Most countries don't just hand out citizenship to everyone born inside their borders. You usually need at least one parent who's a citizen or permanent resident. Germany, for example, didn't even allow second-generation immigrants to become citizens until the 2000s. Even now, German-born children of immigrants must meet certain requirements and apply. Japan? Absolutely not. Birth in Japan means nothing unless your parent is Japanese. France is conditional. You can get citizenship if you're born there, but only if your parents have lived there for years. The UK used to offer birthright citizenship, but changed its laws in 1983, responding to immigration pressure and a growing belief that citizenship shouldn't be automatic. By contrast, the US and Canada still follow a full jus soli model. If you're born on the land, the passport is yours, and that's made these countries outliers, especially as others move away from open birthright policies. So, the question becomes, why did the US take this path in the first place? To understand why the US gives automatic citizenship to anyone born here, you have to go back to one of the most turbulent moments in American history. The Civil War was over. Slavery had been abolished. But what about the children of freed slaves? Could they be citizens? Could the US actually say, you belong here? In 1857, the Supreme Court's infamous Dred Scott decision had said no. Black people, even if born in the US, could never be citizens. That ruling sparked outrage. And after the war, Congress tried to make things right. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 was passed to grant citizenship to anyone born on US soil, except Native Americans, who wouldn't be included until later. But lawmakers feared the act alone wasn't strong enough, so they doubled down, hard-coding it into the Constitution itself. The result? The 14th Amendment. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens. That line wasn't written for tourists or visa holders. It was written to protect the basic humanity of people who had been denied it for centuries. The goal was simple. If you're born here, you are here. No exceptions. And that single sentence has carried forward ever since, surviving waves of immigration, war, and politics. But in recent years, it's come under pressure. Fast forward to today, and that 14th Amendment line is now at the center of a new national argument. In 2018, President Donald Trump dropped a political bombshell. He said he could end birthright citizenship with an executive order. The backlash was instant. Legal scholars, civil rights groups, even members of his own party pushed back. But the message had already landed, and it wasn't just about legal theory. conservative lawmakers started raising alarms about so-called anchor babies, a term critics say is both misleading and dehumanizing. The claim that undocumented immigrants were crossing the border just to give birth so their child would gain citizenship and eventually bring the whole family in. But here's what the numbers show. A US-born child can't sponsor their parents for legal status until they turn 21. The immigration process from there, slow, complex, often denied. So the idea of people gaming the system through newborns is more talking point than tactic. Still, the political heat hasn't cooled. Some Republicans have called for a constitutional amendment to rewrite or clarify the 14th. Others want the Supreme Court to reinterpret it altogether, arguing it was never meant for today's immigration reality. On the other side, immigrant rights groups argue that removing birthright citizenship would create a permanent underclass, millions of kids born stateless right here on US soil. Then there's birth tourism, wealthy families from overseas flying into the US just to give birth, so their child gets the blue passport. It happens, but it's rare. We're talking a few thousand births a year, not some secret invasion. And most of these families don't stay. They leave with a newborn US citizen and a hospital bill. It's legal in a gray sort of way, but not exactly easy or cheap. These cases dominate headlines, but they make up a sliver of all US births. The vast majority of birthright citizenship cases are just people having kids where they live. So where does this all go? Legally, birthright citizenship sits on a razor's edge. The Supreme Court has never directly ruled on whether children born to undocumented immigrants are protected by the 14th Amendment. That means this whole system, this thing we take for granted, is running on interpretation, not direct precedent. Some politicians say we need a constitutional amendment, but that's a steep climb. 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of all states would have to agree. Spoiler alert, they won't. Others want the courts to reinterpret the 14th, narrowing its reach. Say, sure, you're born here, but if your parents aren't subject to US jurisdiction, maybe that clause doesn't apply. It's a legal gamble, but with the current political climate and conservative judicial leanings, it's not off the table. And outside the US, the winds are shifting. Ireland ended full birthright citizenship in 2004 after a referendum. New Zealand tightened its laws in 2005. Australia did it even earlier. Countries are clearly moving away from jus soli, driven by immigration fears, nationalist movements, and shifting demographics. So the US stands increasingly alone, and whether that's a point of pride or a policy flaw depends entirely on where you're standing. Let's say a child is born today in a border town in Texas. Her parents are undocumented, they don't speak English, they don't have legal status, but she cries her first cry on American soil. What is she? A citizen, a political pawn, or a loophole, or maybe just a kid? See, birthright citizenship isn't just about documents. It's not just about who gets a passport or what box you check on a form. It's about belonging, how a country decides who's in and who's out, who's of the nation and who's just here. And for all the headlines, for all the rhetoric and reform bills and Supreme Court debates, this question is still deeply human. It's about the people who grow up saying the Pledge of Allegiance, who ride yellow buses, who learn state capitals and spell Mississippi before they can even pronounce it right. It's about how we treat people who start here, even if their families didn't. Because you can argue about policy, you can argue about border security, about fairness, about systems being abused. But what happens when we start asking children to prove they deserve a place to stand? In the end, birthright citizenship is just one sentence in the Constitution, but for millions, it's the difference between being from somewhere and being told you never really were.